All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining us. Thank you for joining our live webinar from Purchase to Paid, Optimizing Your Online Buying Process. You'll notice that the lines have been muted, but our panel would still love to hear from you throughout today's session. So hopefully by now we're well into 2021. You're familiar with the features in Zoom. Please drop those questions into the Q&A feature. There's also the chat if you would just like to tell us where you're joining from, or if you have any feedback for our speakers. We'll be keeping an eye on both of those. So let's go on to intros. So let's just start with Scott. Scott is the founder and managing partner of Venn Technology. He has more than 15 years experience in the business technology industry, and he founded Venn Technology in 2015 to help small and medium-sized businesses get their time and sanity back by building integrations between Sage Intacct and just about anything with an API. So welcome, Scott. Bill Hammer is joining us today from Atlanta, Georgia. He comes to us with more than 30 years of experience in sales and marketing in ERP, CRM, BI, and HRMS solutions. He's currently the GM for North America with Compleat Software, a leading edge AP automation and P2P software. Prior to joining Compleat, Bill worked for several technology companies, including Sage. And throughout his career, he's actually provided sales, marketing, and business coaching to more than 350 businesses. So lots of experiences there. Thank you, Bill. Moving on to the next, we have Daviana Smith. Daviana is the enablement specialist for Compleat Software, and she is also joining us from Atlanta, Georgia today. Welcome, Daviana. She joined Compleat with more than 5 years experience providing support for financial-based software systems, including Sage. Again, you're probably seeing a theme here, a lot of Sage experience. And last but certainly not least, Lucy Day, Business Development Manager for Compleat Software, is joining us from Hampshire, England. Compleat actually has an office in London. So thank you for joining us from your side of the world, Lucy. For the past 18 years, Lucy has held various account management and business development roles, and she has a very genuine interest in technology and thrives in helping customers understand their processes, challenges, and driving forward value in the adoption of industry-leading software solutions across finance, procurement, and business intelligence. So lots of experience joining us today. Thank you so much again. And with that, I'll hand it off to you, Scott.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mel. So before we get too far along, when we do these things, one of the first things we try to do is to get a better understanding of our audience and where you're coming from. So we're going to throw up a quick poll. We'd like to find out what is it that you're using to manage your purchase requests. So that poll, will leave it up there for just a minute. Check the boxes, and shouldn't be too hard of a quiz. All right, let's close that out. Very good. Thank you very much. All right. Good deal. Thanks for sharing that information. We see some Bill.com, we see some Excel, we see some Intacct. Fantastic, very helpful. All right, well, so Bill, we've known each other a long time. And I think that when Mel said you're 30 years, I think she called you old, but I won't belabor that.
Well, you were just a young child when I met you.
This is true. So we have known each other a long time, and in that length of time, the accounting and ERP space has undergone a lot of evolutions, and the strength of core accounting applications has just grown and grown and grown. And with the strength of the core accounting growth that we've seen, there's also been a tremendous rise of point solutions to work in specific aspects of an organization and tie in with that core accounting. And from what I can tell, purchasing is now really at the forefront of that, of the point solutions that are adding value to the core accounting. So would you maybe just kind of give us your perspective on that?
Yeah, it's one of those things when you take a look at ERPs, they went through an evolution. If you go way back, it was getting data in, then it was getting data out, extending functionality, and software vendors creating ERPs can only take on so much to really focus on making those core applications really well. What's been expanding is the products that integrate with these products to extend those mid-market products, really giving you the same capabilities that tier one products have. And along the purchasing side, this gets into the automation of a purchase to pay process, AP automation, whereby you've got a very good workflow process and the ability to move this from being able to not only do workflows, but to take away repetitive tasks and automate that you can be used for higher level value things of really analyzing AP spend. If you could go to the next slide, Melissa. So we really do simplify the way everyone buys, pays, and saves. And a lot of this I'll go through on the next slide if you go through one more. So this is really where the heart of things start, is along that digitizing process of invoices. And we've all received invoices now, via email and a PDF, but somebody still has to print them, enter them, get all the approvals in, and we aren't in the office anymore. And one of my sayings is, SneakerNet no longer works. I can't simply walk from one desk to another, say, can you sign this? And Scott, I think you've had an example of that early in your career.
So as we were prepping for this conversation kind of took me way back to my first job out of college. There was literally a binder, a 3-ring binder, outside of the finance office. And when we needed something, we would literally go handwrite on a piece of paper and then take and get the appropriate signatures and then bring that paper back to the finance department in order to get our PO number. And so I am glad to see that we've made some strides and that we don't have to rely on SneakerNet, especially today where so many of us are working remotely and not in an office.
Now, this is going to surprise you, Scott. Daviana and I were on a call yesterday with someone looking at our product that was still doing this in printed piece of papers and sending printed piece of papers to go do the process that you did probably 15, 20 years ago, So yeah, it still exists out there. So if you take a look at this, the AP automation, getting those workflows, but then starting before the invoice even arrives to make sure that you got an automated process that you can raise the purchase recs and put some governance around who they purchase from. Are they following the rules that you put into play? And then even taking it further on the automation process of being able to integrate to e-commerce sites and things like that. And then we've rolled out the ability for advanced spend analytics, where we can not only start to save time, but save money on the AP spend. If you'd go to the next slide, Melissa. So at the heart of the iComplete product is Capture, the yellowish on the upper right-hand corner. Basically, this is an AI engine. What's different between AI and OCR is AI is actually a learning tool. It's learning every time something comes in and says, oh, I've seen this before. I know where to code this. So since we're capturing both header and line item detail, we can start to take this down to the line item that it knows that, oh, if it was raised by this individual and it came from this vendor, it needs to go to this, and it's this line item, it needs to go to this GL account code. So when you go to the left-hand side of the automation and purchasing aspect of this, we can actually code it. So when by the time it comes in, it goes into Sage Intacct, you don't have to do any of that coding. In addition, we have integration today to Amazon Online, Office Depot, Staples, whereby you no longer have to type something twice. I don't have to go to the e-commerce site. Oh, this is what I want to get. Now let me go into a system to type it in so that I can get it approved to order it. It is a seamless integration that we will show in the demo. And then the third component to this is, since we're capturing that header and line item detail, all that data is going into an Azure data lake. Currently 13 billion line items, 70,000 vendors. Think of what kind of analysis you can do along those lines. We had one, took a look at one set of data down at the line item level. One person spent $49 for a keyboard. Another one, same company, different location, spend $15 for the same keyboard. Why does that happen? Because there isn't governance. There isn't the ability to take a look at this data currently. And that's where we're extending these systems to. And Lucy will get into more of that as we go through as well. Next slide. So really the benefits are the rules-based engine. How many of you have a workflow capability within Sage Intacct? However, it doesn't meet what you really need to do because it just isn't broad enough. There is unlimited workflows, the capability to build a workflow. I have yet to say, no, we can't do it. We get questions all the time around, can you do this, that, or the other thing? We can do them simultaneously by department, by line item. I can literally get to the point, if it's a Dell computer and it's $7,500 or more, send it here to get an approval done. The punch out is the integration to the e-commerce site. We can do sales tax by line item, and then the advanced spend analytics, and we've got a budgeting module coming out soon. And the budgeting is really for the department level, not necessarily on the finance side, but so that the department knows, I've got this much budget, how much of it have I used? Can I really go out and get more of this? So, it's a very good, complete system to automate this process. Next slide. This slide just gives a nice view of the integration to Sage Intacct, so you can see which dimensions are bi-directional, which ones are being pushed in one direction. And we do support the top entity level within Sage as well, which has been a little bit unique. We also do support UDDs. However, there's a little asterisk. As long as the user-defined dimension is simple, it doesn't have any interdependencies or formulas, we can integrate to that as well. Next slide. And this is just a sample of the customer base that we have using the iComplete product. And we're growing in the States, and it is an introduction into the States. We've been in the States for about a year. Company's been around since 2008, UK based. They introduced this product in 2017, a rewrite from a on-prem product, and that AI engine has been out since 2017. That's a long time for an AI engine. It is very mature. And the next slide. A demonstration is worth a million words, so with that, I will turn it over to Daviana.
Thank you, Bill. I really appreciate it. As you and Scott were talking earlier, I've seen plenty of companies that are still, it's not unbelievable, but it's believable, still using paper invoices to, enter that information into their finance system, or having someone sign it off and then filing it in a file cabinet. It's just what our product can do is definitely eliminate, the need to have the space to have to hold all of that paper. I've seen businesses with like these boxes, these labeled boxes of every single year of all the invoices and receipts and everything that they have. And this kind of stores it into a digital format that allows you to retrieve that information as you need it remotely and from anywhere. So I'm really excited to be able to show you guys this demo today. I'm just going to go ahead and quickly disconnect from Bill's screen, and then we'll go through with our demo today. So I'm hoping everyone can see. I'm sorry. Technical difficulties. I'm sorry, guys. Can you guys see everything okay?
We got it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
So the great thing about iComplete is that it's completely web-based. So there's no installation on your server. There's no multiple computers involved unless you're getting that information from online. We simply provide you with your login account, or you can get that information from our online website. Your user will typically come into iComplete, will log in with their designated login ID. And once you land on the iComplete homepage, you'll notice that each of the applications that are available to you will be dictated by the user permissions that are available to you in iComplete. So we actually have 4 different types of users within iComplete, and you can actually mix and match the users available within the system. So you have your administrator. That's going to be the person managing the day-to-day tasks. They're going to be adding in new users. They're going to be connecting to Sage Intacct and making sure that connection is fluid, as well as creating any of the approval workflows that we have within our software and managing invoices and so forth. We next have the purchaser. So this is the person that comes in, they're raising purchase requisitions, and they're submitting that purchase requisition through an approval workflow, and that allows it to be approved. And at the final stage, it becomes a purchase order, and then you can send it on to your vendor, you can send it on to your supplier, or you can use it for historical information. We then have our AP operator. So after the purchase comes in, you've placed your order with your vendor, someone needs to then come in and enter that information, enter that receipt information, enter that invoice information, so that you can have it available in Sage Intacct, so you can develop the reports that you need to be able to identify what purchases are being made within your business. So this AP operator is applying all the relevant GL account coding, all the relevant departments, all the relevant programs, or whatever classification that you use to kind of determine where your money is going. That's going to be the role of that AP operator. And then the simpler role is the approver. So this is people on your finance team. This is people in your departments. This is your executive team. They're coming in and they're taking a look at any transaction that you create within iComplete, and then they're approving it. So they're checking it. They're saying, does this person really need 5 computers for their department? We've just purchased computers last year, for example. Will I need to approve this? Am I going to deny this? And you can enter why you don't want to approve it, and you can enter why you're going to approve it on the transaction, so that it can move on to the next stage. What you'll also notice here on the home page is that we have an email address available to you. This is your e-invoicing email address. This is the core functionality of iComplete. You can send your digital invoices. You can also scan your invoices into iComplete, send it to that email address, and iComplete is actually going to extract all of that information in a typable format so that you can then sync that into your finance system. So there's no double entry going on. You can kind of take a view of those transactions, send them on through that approval workflow process, and then get them posted. One of our biggest core functionalities as well, as I've been mentioning, is the approval workflow process. So I'm actually going to go into a couple of workflows to kind of show you how that routing system takes place. So there's no limit to the amount of approval processes that you can create for your business. You can align this functionality for your business throughout. In this particular example, I'm going to show you a workflow created for our marketing department, right? So for the marketing department, I want to govern how much money is being spent on marketing purchases, how much money is being spent on advertising, commercials, how much money are we pushing out through the business. So we create an approval workflow process, starting with maybe your mid-level marketing director. They want to see when a transaction is for a certain amount. So in this particular case, we have what's called an approval group. I can define certain conditions and criteria that will trigger the approval workflow process on the transaction. So in this case, we have a threshold, right? So say, for example, I'm okay with purchases that are under $20,000. I'm okay with that. I don't need to see that. So I'm going to set a threshold for any amount over $20,000. I'm going to set that limit here so that anytime a transaction comes in and it's over $20,000, I'm going to be the one to approve the transaction because I want to make sure I have my eyes and ears on it. Anything below that $20,000 threshold limit is actually going to skip this stage in the workflow and go on to the next stage. So it's working in a descending order. It's coming from position 1 and it's going down through position 3, position 4, whatever amount of positions that you have within your company. There's no limit to the amount of stages that you can create. Additionally, you can add in different conditions and rules to trigger the event to occur within your workflow. So for example, iComplete is actually syncing, and we're gathering all the information from Sage Intacct so that you can use it throughout iComplete. So we're gathering your custom fields, your locations, your vendors, all that jazz from Sage Intacct, and you can use that as a filtering basis to kind of trigger that workflow to take place. So I can say, I have this custom field called payment method within Sage Intacct. Well, I want it to equal or not equal if the line is blank or not. I can choose what method I'm going to use for that condition to be applied to. And I can choose the option within Sage Intacct. So this is saying here, if the payment method is equal to check, then I'm going to trigger this part of the workflow process. And this approver is going to have to come in and approve the transaction before it moves on to the next step. If the conditions do not equal check, then of course it's going to skip that stage in the workflow and it's just going to move on to the next step. So the route of your transportation is changing based on your destination, right? So we're working kind of like in a transportation method. This is our roadmap. What's also cool about iComplete is when we do the transaction, you're going to see the workflow. And I'm going to show you guys this in a minute, but you're going to see how it changes based on conditions and transaction data that is being received from your transaction. So it can be a purchase order or an invoice. I'm going to start off the process by showing you our beginning expected process. So typically your purchasing process in your business is going to start off with somebody creating a purchase, right? Someone has to go in, they have to request items to be purchased. Someone approves it. Once the order comes in and you get your receipt or you get your invoice, at that point, then you want to take a look at the invoice and make sure that you've received those items. You want to make sure everything is correct, and then you post it. So we have two different options in which that you can create a purchase order within iComplete. So you can actually choose from any number of vendors that we've synced from Sage Intacct. So you can select any number one. So for example, I can choose Amazon in this case. I can choose a template. So these are orders that have already taken place, and I'm looking to duplicate that particular order. So I can actually choose from a template, or I can start from scratch and I can create a brand new purchase requisition. Just like any typical ordering system, you're just going to have to enter all of the product information, right? So the item code, the item description, the cost of the unit, how much of those items that you want. You just want to place that order. You can furthermore go through and add in like GL account codes, locations, departments, projects, any number of fields that is coming from Sage Intacct will be available for you within iComplete. For the purposes of today's call, I'm actually going to show you a cool functionality that we have called iComplete Punch Out. So we basically can log into any URL website or any e-commerce website and be able to create a shopping experience on that end and bring it back into iComplete so it can further go through that approval process. So in this example, we're going to use Amazon Business. I have it available.
Daviana.
Yes, Melissa.
Hey, Daviana, before we move forward on this point, so you've talked a lot about approval workflows. We received a question from our audience regarding, can the person who raises the purchase rec also be an approver of the rec they raised?
They certainly can. So the cool thing that we can do is actually mix and match user roles and permissions. So someone can ultimately create purchase orders, or they can edit invoices, but also be involved in the approval process as well. So it's like a self-approval process that can be conducted for that user.
Great, thanks.
No problem. Thank you. Keep the questions coming. So as we begin to create our purchase for Amazon, the user will come in, they will select their designated e-commerce site that they would like to use. And in this case for Amazon, it brings up an actual shopping cart or a catalog view immediately for the user. They can also type in the item that they're looking to purchase. So in this case, I want to purchase binding covers. So I'm going to search for my item. It's actually going to create a new session within Amazon. So you can see I'm no longer in the iComplete website. It's redirected to Amazon, and I can choose the item that I want. This actually mimics a typical shopping experience with Amazon. So it looks like a common experience, although it's being synced with iComplete. So the user would come in, they would choose the item that they need, they would add it to their cart, they go through the typical purchasing product process of including their shipping address, making sure they have their payment details available. However, once we get to the last stage in this process, it does not actually conduct a purchase in Amazon. You actually have an option here that says submit order for approval. So this is going through your business's procedures, and it's making sure that you have somebody in your business looking over the transaction before the actual order takes place. So as I select on this button, it actually brings me back into iComplete, and it's going to actually extract all of that information in an order format. I, as the purchaser, I'm going to come in, I'm going to make sure that I have the correct shipping information coming from Sage Intacct. I can also use quick actions if there's like missing fields here. I can say, well, let's pre-fill all these fields to this account. And iComplete will actually pre-fill all of that information and kind of make them the same. Once all of the missing information is filled out, you can then submit it to the relevant workflow. In this case, I'm going to choose Jen. And it's now going to submit that transaction for approval. So in this window, this is the window that the purchaser is going to be most familiar with. This is where you're going to see all of their transactions. So anything that they've saved, anything that they submitted, and anything that they're waiting to be approved. If you're waiting for something to be approved, you can also see who's next in line to approve the transaction. In this case, I'm also the person who's going to self-approve my own purchase order that I've raised. So I'm going to come in and take a look at the purchase order. This is the summary screen of my order. I can take a look at the documents and timeline, and we can see on the right-hand side is my approval workflow process going from position 1 all the way down to that last position. And this routing sequence is actually going to change based on the conditions that I approve as the approver throughout the entire process. So we can see that I'm next in line as the department manager, then it goes to the director and the finance team. I think these two have higher threshold limits. So most likely what's going to happen is it's going to skip these 2 stages and move on to the next step. And I'm going to show you next how it changes the approval workflow process on this screen. So I can approve or deny the transaction. I can also add a comment if I like. I'm going to approve it. I was like, nice job, yada, yada, and select approve. And at this point, we can see that my transaction has now been approved here. Purchase order number 48. So here's the summary of the transaction. Furthermore, I can also receipt the item. So say as the purchaser, I received my item and I'm saying, hey, well, I've got the original invoice. It came with my order. I can actually also receipt the line items that I have. And if there's any items that are canceled, maybe the items are on back order, I can actually cancel those items out of my PO. So iComplete can actually do like a 3-way match. You can match your order against your invoices, and you can also receipt the order, receipt the invoice against your purchase order. So I'll show you a little bit more about receipting a little bit later. But going back to documents and timeline, you see where we stopped? We stopped at department manager because we did not meet the criteria for the other 2 positions to take place. And it approved our transaction. So you can see that my workflow has actually changed in this stage. I'm going to show you the invoices. Before I move on to the next stage, do I have any questions?
Yeah, we actually had one come through. So one of our listeners noted that you can connect to any e-commerce site, and they're basically asking, is that true? Obviously, this particular use case was in Amazon. Can maybe you could offer up a few other examples of other sites that your customers are connecting to?
I'll be happy to take that one on. We've got that capability today for Amazon, Staples, and Office Depot, or yes, Office Depot. We are within the next month rolling out functionality that within a matter of minutes, we can build that out to any e-commerce site that we would do for any client at no charge.
So it's very close to being here. I've seen a couple of test cases and it
yes.
literally looks so cool. I cannot wait for it to come out, but we're super close to it for sure.
And the really nice part about that is most times what's required is that the e-commerce site needs to use a CXML integration. And with the technology we're rolling out, it doesn't matter if they're using CXML or not. And that's been a hurdle for integrations of this type. So we've got that solved. And so in essence, if you're using an e-commerce site, yes, we'll be able to integrate to it. So we're very excited to have that coming out.
Seriously. All right, so after our purchasing takes place, right? So you've got your purchase, you've got the items, you're able to receipt it, you're getting an invoice for that order because your vendor wants to get paid for the service that they delivered to you, right? So your vendor in this case, or you've uploaded your invoice to iComplete, we received it, we're receiving it through well, it's not third-party software, but it's our middleware software that we've created called Compleat Capture. Compleat Capture is what is extracting your information and putting it in a typable format so that you can edit and code it to be posted into Sage Intacct. So the AP operator now, so mind you, we went through the admin to the purchaser to the AP operator. Notice the pattern, right? So the admin comes in, they configure the workflow, the purchaser comes in, they create the purchase requisition, they raise it, the approver comes in, so the approver is going to be on both stages, but now the AP operator is going to kick in and they now have to edit the invoice so that it can be approved to be posted into Sage Intacct. So as the AP operator, I come in, I'm managing my invoices. All of the invoices that have been extracted from iComplete is going to show in what's called the unprocessed tray. So that means that's all invoices that have not yet been seen by the AP operator. Now, I did mention that we do a three-way match, so you can match your purchase order and your invoices and your receipts all together to have that fluid functionality within your business. iComplete actually does an automatic invoice matching process. And your invoice matching is specified using specific colors, right? Red means no, yellow means pause, green means go, right? So we can show all these ones that are showing in red is showing no PO match. Anything is yellow is basically saying there's something wrong with this invoice. You need to fix it so that we can further match it. And anything that's green has been matched. Currently, our purchase order number 48 hasn't been matched yet. And that's because we need to fill in some missing information in the invoice. So I'm actually going to go back to the summary screen. So very typical to the purchase order screen, the window is pretty much the same for the AP operator. They come into the invoice. There is a main invoice summary screen. iComplete will alert you to any missing fields or any required fields that you need. You need to fill out those fields before you can then push it through to be submitted through the approval workflow process, right? So we have our summary page here. One thing that I think is a really cool functionality is we can also change document types in iComplete. So say, for example, your vendor sent an invoice, but on the invoice, they gave you a credit. So technically it's not an invoice, but it's really a credit memo, but the extraction software didn't see that. You can actually change documents from an invoice to a credit memo and vice versa, which gives you greater control as the admin to kind of rule and govern your own software and product, right, in-house. So this is something that you can govern for your employees. The AP operator will come into the edit window. iComplete will give you a display of the original invoice. So you will always have a copy of that original invoice as an attachment. And we further break it down by header and line level values. So your header is all of your summary information, right? Your order information, the order date, the PO number, that is your header. And then every individual item would be your line item. So we kind of extract all of those information, all of that information on the right-hand screen so that you can have greater flexibility to edit that information. So in this case, I need to connect this particular vendor to the vendor in Sage Intacct. So we want to make sure what iComplete is saying and what iComplete is receiving as an invoice matches and correlates to the vendors in your finance system. So you have to do this mapping process at least once. So I'm going to map it to the correct vendor in Sage Intacct, and I'm also going to enter my locations. So I'm retrieving the locations from with Sage Intacct, and I can code it on that flexible level. All of my line data looks okay. My unit cost is fine. I'm reviewing the invoice. At this point, I can now submit it to go through the approval process. But before I submit it, I'm going to take it out to the main screen. Because at this point now I can match my invoice because my vendor has been matched, right? Now I can see that iComplete automatically can see that this invoice now matches with that purchase order that I created. It will also have an original copy of that purchase order available to me on the screen, which is awesome. I'm now going to submit the purchase order. I'm going to put it through that same Gen queue. I'm just showing that I'm linking the vendor to Amazon, basically. Okay, so it's now submitted it and it's moved on to the next stage. Again, I'm doing a self-approval, so I'm going to come into my awaiting approval tray, and I'm going to approve the transaction. I can see from the timeline, everything looks good. Same things going through the routing. I'm going to approve it. Now, once iComplete completes the approval stage, we actually automatically begin the process to sync the transaction and post it into Sage Intacct. So you'll notice that we have journal numbers here. So once the transaction has been posted to Sage Intacct, we actually generate a journal number letting you know that that process is taking place. For further matching capabilities, I'm actually going to bring you back to the purchase order and to show you how we can quickly receive the order. Because if I go into this invoice, it's showing that the order matches and it's showing all of that looks great, but it's showing that I still haven't received my items for this particular vendor. So I can go back out. I can take a look at all of my purchase orders. And at this point, now I want to go to my approved tray and I want to receive those items. I go to the original POs here. Oh, let's see. I can take a look at the items. I can receive them. I can update the quantity. I can also update the unit cost if that changed on the order. So I'm going to, in this case, I'm going to now receive the items. All right, so that's going to move it to my receipting tray. When I select on the receipt and go to original PO lines. Sorry, I'm not sure why it's not showing. I'm going to go back to grid. We can show you the relevant invoice number. So the invoice, the purchase order, and all of the receipted lines are all going to be connected into one document. Okay. I'm going to actually go back into the invoice. So at this point, we should have already posted our transaction into Sage Intacct. It shows our journal information. We can also see if the payment status has been paid. So there's different company statuses that we can set. This particular status allows me to do a check with Sage Intacct and lets me see if that particular document has been paid within Sage Intacct. And it gives me the information of when we recorded that data. So when did we check for that payment status? I'm going to now head over into Sage Intacct. In this case, we're connected at the top level. So I'm going to go into bills. So we go into accounts payable, we go into bills. Depending on if I was connected via a specific entity, it would show all of my items. Let's see. And any invoice that we've posted is actually going to have the full attached. So the full link to iComplete, number one, and the attachment details are going to be included on that posting information. So we'll always have an original copy of our invoice available to us once we post it directly into Sage Intacct. And that, I'm sorry, it's just taking, I guess, a while to bring it up. But in the meantime, does anyone have any questions while the attachment is loading from Sage Intacct? And so we have all of our transaction details here available to us. So any email contents are going to be available. Any original attachment information is going to be available as well. So there's my email contents here. And that's pretty much our end-to-end process. You know, as the admin, like I said, you come in, you administer, you create the workflows, you create the process, you align it with your business goals and your business procedures. And your end users, they come in, they raise those purchases, they receive them, they invoice them, and they have it finally posted into your finance system using the correct coding information. Next, we're going to be getting a demonstration of our ASAs, or Advanced Spend Analytics program, from Lucy. Before we transition over to Lucy, I just want to make sure that, I know the demo took some time, so I just want to make sure there's no unanswered questions before we move over into ASA.
Looks like we're good, Daviana.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you so much for that, Daviana. It was really useful. And hi, everyone. I'm Lucy Day. I'm joining you from London in the UK, and it's great to be here. And the next section of this is going to be focusing on the Advanced Spend Analytics, which is the BI element to this. So let me just share my screen. And if I could get a thumbs up when you can see this.
Oh, I like that. Thumbs up.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. So a former colleague of mine, when I was working with an alternative a financial solution, Infor Systems, said it's all about the data. And essentially, when it comes to making informed decisions about spend, that is 100% the case. And that's the entire reason that we put this together, because it's all about providing finance, procurement, senior managers, budget holders, any key stakeholder really, to be able to access a range of detailed and comprehensive reports around what you're spending. So what we do here is provide real-time access to all of the purchase order and invoice headlines, and we can do that across multiple locations, across all of your suppliers, and across all of the expenditure categorization. And typically, from my 18-year experience working within the sort of business software industry, it's actually very hard to achieve this level of insight, as typically reporting you'd get out of your finance system would mean that it's has to be produced by somebody. By that point, by the time it's been distributed, it's out of date, and it might not necessarily even give you the insights that you're looking to get out of what you're spending. We've gone a stage further and also broken out the nominal manager account coding into its own reporting structure, because what we really wanted to do with this tool is to provide finance and procurement the opportunity to view how their end users are coding all of their requisitions, because no human is perfect and sometimes people get it wrong, but that's okay. That's what this tool is designed to show. So what we have broken down this report into 3 key areas. So we're looking at spend, and then we look at it by location, and then by supplier. We can go down to line level, and I'm going to touch on that, but I think it's important to note that's not part of the core reporting suite, but I'll show that, and that's certainly something that some of our customers who are using this already have gone on then to take on, just so that they can start analysing items, referring back to what Bill mentioned earlier, where you might have somebody paying twice as much for the same or similar item. And just to put some context around this, there are some references that might not seem familiar. So this is data that we've actually used from a client that we've anonymised. So in this particular example, the data has come from a client in the UK. They're in the education sector, and they were managing 35 schools. So I'm going to jump in now to the first top level report that we've got here that we've called the information panel. What we wanted to do here was essentially provide a high level summary, which is showing the volume of data that's going through the tool. So any order or invoice that we process through iComplete, we capture that and we put that into our Microsoft Azure data lake. And then what we're doing is querying that in real time. So what we're able to do is build a picture of spend from the moment that you start using iComplete, and obviously build out from there. And even though this is rendering some top level information, so you can see it's $8 million net of spend, it's 12,000 invoices, it's 35 sites, you can get some interesting insight from this. And this particular client was quite shocked when they saw that they had across their 35 sites over 1,000 suppliers that they were engaged with. And certainly when you're managing multiple sites, it can be quite difficult if they're all working independently of each other, engaging with, you know, suppliers of their own choosing, to get a handle on how many suppliers there may be in the mix. So from here, we've then got a data summary. So again, what we've wanted to do is provide a summary of all of the top overview of the total expenditure by category going through iComplete. And as we capture invoices, or indeed as purchase orders are raised, what we're doing is we're categorizing vendors by industry standard procurement expenditure category. So it provides an instant overview of the total you know, your business is spending in each particular cost area. We obviously capture all that data, and we can use this slicer over here, so you can look at all spend, or if you wanted to, you know, refine that down to look at, you know, the last month or so, you can use that little date range there. And we've provided a graphical display of net spend by invoice date, because what that really allows you to do is get a very clear view of what's been happening when, just to pick out any spikes or anomalies that you might want to go and have a look at. We also can filter this by direct spend and indirect spend. And what we've done on the indirect side is we've got here a total sector savings percentage. We have a number of partnerships with global procurement partners, and what we've done is we've worked with them to put into this tool actual savings that have been achieved through various different previous projects that they've worked on. So whilst this percentage saving is an indication, it's not a guarantee, it's actually a really good starting point for our clients to actually look at a priority list of areas to focus their efforts on when it comes to driving cost savings throughout the organization. But as you can see, it's very quick and easy to see your sort of highest category of spend, which again, it might prompt some internal conversations for a spend review. And in this particular example, the client actually engaged with us to do a review on office solutions, which is then where you can start using the advanced filtering. So these are top level reports that are showing summarized information. The reports now underneath you can filter on, and you do that through the advanced filtering panel here. So it allows you to tailor each dashboard to show a specific set of data. It could be by supplier, it could be by location, it could even be by user. So bearing in mind we've anonymized this in a real life scenario, this would obviously have the username listed here. We can also change this filtering. So being a school, they wanted it by academic year, but we could just as easy as filter it on a month basis. You can do it by site, and that's why it references academy and primary and secondary here, because that's the type of school. But if I do it by supplier category and I click on office solutions, you're going to see some of the data here just changing, and that's now what these sub reports are now looking at. So if I look at spend over time, what this is showing now, I've just gone into that office solutions category, is a breakdown of the volume of spend, invoice and supplier numbers used within each annual and monthly period specifically for office solutions. So this just gives you some high level information. If I then go into the nominal analysis here, what I can now see is a breakdown of spend across their own general ledger for office solutions. So what we're doing is when each purchase order is raised within iComplete by a user, they obviously have to code that to their own budget account codes. So what we can do by taking that information is form a powerful overview of the percentage of spend, but also the number of invoices and suppliers that have been used within each. We provide that in a graphical representation again because we want to provide that fast view of any spikes or anomalies within the expenditure. And a lot of the clients that have already got this, and we've taken feedback from them, have found it really useful because it's allowed them to find a number of items to query, which they may have found eventually, but certainly not as quickly. An example that I can sort of pull out on here is, why is there 4 invoices for a supplier that's been coded to hospitality when I'm looking at an office solutions category, for example. If I then go into sites, what we can do here, if you do manage multiple locations, is we can provide that as a graphical representation. But interestingly, in this example, what the customer wanted to do was actually start looking at spend per site. The biggest challenge that they had was that each school essentially had their own buying ability, that everyone in each of the schools was able to purchase their own items. So for their centralized procurement manager, it was really, really challenging to get a handle on what each site was doing. And it was really problematic for them to try and pull that information out from their finance system. So they asked us to break this out on a spend by site. But what they asked us to also do is put in this specific metric for them. So this number X by site, this actually for them represents pupils. So it's the number of pupils per site, but it could just as easy as be something like number of staff. And we also did something recently for a care home where they wanted us to actually put in the number of beds per care home. But if I just filter this on here to just now show you from a top-down level, this is the sort of insight that you can get from this. Interestingly, I've got 3 schools here that are of the same size in terms of the number of pupils, but I have this school here that is spending more than 3 times the amount of the 2 underneath. So that would immediately say to me, I need to go and speak to that school to find out why it is that they're spending a lot more on office solutions than schools that are of exactly the same size. And the care home group that I referenced earlier that we actually did this for, in where it was number of beds, what we were actually able to do was work with them where they were then able to identify 2 of their homes with a similar number of beds but with a significantly different expenditure. And basically what happened was they found out that one home was spending double the amount on consumables just because they were using non-preferred supplier deals. So what they then did was built that supplier integration through their iComplete software, through a punch-out integration, and then that led to approximately £10,000 worth of savings per year. So this is where you can start to see how you can use this to drive user behaviour, but also the savings through the system as well. We then look at suppliers, so bearing in mind we're still looking at office solutions here. What we can now see is an expenditure by vendor, which is showing from highest to lowest of all the suppliers that have been used in that category. Interestingly, the particular client that this data is based on, they had no idea until they started using this tool that they had 40 suppliers across all of the schools to provide office solutions. And for them, that immediately raised concerns. They wanted to obviously investigate that because there could be a scenario where you've got a particular site paying more for the same or similar goods. And if I go into the detail that's behind this, what I can then start to do is start looking at the greater detail that sits behind this. So I can now see which suppliers have been used under the office solutions category, but also the nominal code, because what this allows procurement and finance to do is actually start looking at where could we consolidate providers of similar products and services, whether that be through a formal tendering process or review. And what you can do through here is filter on invoices, and that then puts every single supplier and the number of invoices lowest, obviously with highest being at the bottom. So again, from this client's perspective, they were really intrigued as to why there were so many providers that they'd only ever raised one invoice with, some of whom hadn't been traded with in over a year. And if I think of one client that actually started using this, they saved, it was just under 17,000 sterling within a month, simply because they wanted to have a look at the suppliers of paper. So what they basically did is they did a consolidation project where they looked at all their suppliers, they found the cheapest unit price from one particular supplier, and again, built that integration through into their Compleat software. And that's where they were able to save the £17,000 per year from. And if I go into the categories tab, this again just gives a bit of a further detailed view of expenditure percentage, number of suppliers alongside, average invoice value per expenditure category, again, providing procurement with that starting point where they might be thinking about doing any supplier consolidation projects. And it's really easy to take this back to a top level report. So if I just reset all of this, that's going to now bring that. And if I just go back to where I was before, you'll now see that that matches the data that's within that summary panel. And last but not least, I did mention that we do capture line level information. So whilst this isn't a part of the tool out of the box, it's something that we can discuss with clients and decide whether or not it's something that they want to capture. We can see that the information going through the tool, it's 26,000 rows of information. There's 18,000 unique item descriptions, 107 nominals. And if we then get down into the data underneath it, if I wanted to, for example, type in a particular supplier, that's going to then rationalize all of that data so I can actually get down to the individual item level if I so want to. But that's pretty much my session done. I hope you found it useful, and I shall now hand back over to you guys.
Thank you, Lucy. Well, we are coming up on time. Before we dismiss, Mel, do we have any additional questions from the audience?
We have two. The first is, what is Lucy's favorite football club? Saying it, she's out of the UK.
Wow. I'm a Spurs fan, but there's a story behind that, and that's because one of my former employers had a box at White Hart Lane, and I used to get to go and take customers out on lovely trips to watch Premier League games, but I kind of stuck with them ever since. So their 1-0 defeat over Man City, get in Spurs.
All right. Awesome. All right. We've got a couple Liverpool fans in our office, so I'll have to share that. Yeah. The second question is, how long does it take to complete the setup and configuration with Sage Intacct? That's for anyone.
Yeah, that's really a twofold question. The nice part with the product, to set up the integration to Sage Intacct is literally 5 to 10 minutes. It's just connecting to your instance of the software. It does everything on the back end. A typical implementation on Sage Intacct, probably 2 to 3 days. Where the work comes in is setting up the employees, setting up your workflows, and testing the invoices coming through. Did I miss anything, Daviana? You're on mute.
No, you did. That was everything. Thank you.
All right, very good. So that takes it for the questions. Scott, want to thank you and your team for putting this together. It's always great to be to working with you and Venn, and appreciate it very much.
Likewise, and for those of you in attendance, we'll be making a follow-up. If you are just itching to go and you need more questions answered ASAP, go out to CompleatSoftware.com, and Bill and his team will prioritize you in their follow-up. So thanks so much, everybody.